I try to look at things differently. The question should be, does Reform Judaism accept Orthodox tradition as a legitimate form of Judaism? Reform rejects that the laws as dictated in the Torah, the Talmud and the Shulchan Aruch as mandated and commanded by GD, and therefore can and sometimes should be rejected. Therefore, in founding itself, the Reform movement rejects Orthodox tradition-based Judaism as the authentic Judaism, and by default sets itself up as the polar opposite thereof. The main polemic here is the question of whether there is such a thing as absolute truth. Therefore, there are no true boundaries and limits to what Judaism constitutes. This leaves the definition up to each individual or congregation. For example, if I want to sell you a piece of property, and you ask me what the boundaries are, if I can't show you exactly where they are, I cannot tell you how large or small the property is and how much you are getting for your money. If I showed you that inside that property there are even smaller boundaries that are rock solid, and that is what I am selling you, and the other part of the property which borders other properties is somewhat fluid, then you can pay full price for the rock solid area and maybe less for the shared space property. Orthodox has rock solid boundaries for its core, and there is some fluidity based upon the particular rulings and customs of some communities, but they all have the same core. All other streams cannot tell you what their rock-solid core is because they by definition don't have one. Anything can change based upon the feelings and current morals of the members of the movement. All streams outside of orthodoxy believe that there is no rock-solid core and that there are no inviolable borders to what can be considered Judaism. Orthodoxy absolutely rejects that creed. It believes that the 613 commandments are inviolable and therefore cannot accept any creed that rejects those commandments as Judaism. First of all, your statement that Israel does not accept Reform conversions is incorrect. As per the law of return, people who underwent Reform or conservative conversions are eligible to go to Israel and become Israeli citizens. These conversions, however, are not recognized by the chief rabbinate of Israel. The law in Israel is based on ancient Ottoman law that gives jurisdiction to religious authorities over various matters such as weddings and burials. So, for example, if you were an Israeli citizen who was converted by a Reform rabbi, the rabbinate would not agree to marry you in Israel, because they do not acknowledge the conversion even though the state of Israel does. Many Reformed Jews would also disagree with your assumptions such as not believing in the divine inspiration of the Torah or not seeking rabbinical counsel. They also follow some Jewish values and traditions way more diligently than many secular Jews in Israel. Bottom line is that maintaining a Jewish identity away from Israel is very, very difficult. The Reform movement today seeks to provide an answer to this challenge. It is a platform for those who want to maintain their Jewish heritage and identity, without living the very difficult, some would say anachronistic, lifestyle of Orthodox Jewry. A different platform to do that, by the way, is called Israel.